Hey y'all, this is She Buys It with Whitney Nicely.
Yay! Hello. Welcome to the She Buys It podcast. I have an expert real estate investor with us today. Y'all are going to love this beautiful Kentucky woman, Sharon I'm going to butcher your name. I can say Louisville, right, but I'm going to butcher
VornHolt.
VornHolt. We do say all those letters. We were just laughing because she's from Louisville, Kentucky, and I can say that because I'm a Tennessean and we just leave out letters, but all of the letters of her name are pronounced. So Sharon is here with us, and she is a real estate coach, and she was gracious enough to have me on her podcast a hot minute ago. But we're still back together, and we're going to be talking all about getting those first deals done. We're going to be talking about the things that she's noticed in the market and in the meetups and everywhere. And y'all are going to learn so much from this amazing woman with all these years of experience. And I can't wait to dig into this. Yay!
Well, yay. I'm glad to be here, Whitney. It's exciting.
Yay. Fantastic. So go ahead and tell us, what is your podcast name? What do you focus on, so that if people are here and they want to follow up with you, how are they going to find you?
Well, it's Let's Talk Real Estate Investing, but you can find everything, links off to everything over my blog, the Louisville Gals Real Estate blog. So I have the podcast linked off of there. You know, it's available on iTunes, Stitch, all the normal places you find podcasts. But, in the beginning, I just really it was all about any business, just wholesaling. And I still do that, talk about all the different strategies. But I have three main areas of focus now. One is probate investing. I've been doing that for more than a decade. So I love probates because the people they always need to sell the house. But I've learned over the years that marketing and branding, if you don't get those two things right, you're going to be dead in the water. So marketing is how you get leads, but branding is why they choose you. And you do a phenomenal job of branding because you're just Whitney. You're just pink and you're Whitney. So, but some people, and myself included, it was a little bit harder to go, okay, what's my brand? And it's not just about colors and fonts. It's about who you are, your values, we always say it's what people say about you when you go out of the room. It's how you make people feel. So I try to help people that are in business. I teach probates all the time, but in the process, teach you how to build your brand so that your marketing works better, because not everybody's as out there as you are. I mean, you just kind of flow out there, but not everybody's as extroverted as you are. So some people have to actually really think about this.
I think I used to be more extroverted. Yesterday I went to get my hair done, and it was a new lady, and she had lots of questions for me about what I do and how I do it. And I was exhausted by the time I left because, you and I, we could talk for days about real estate and nerding out and all that stuff. But I found that when I get around people that aren't already ready to be in real estate, I'm exhausted by the end of it. I think I'm becoming introverted, if that's a possibility.
Yeah, I do think it's a thing, and it's a thing when you. I think when you're a coach, I think you find yourself just wanting to go, okay, where's a corner sometimes? where's the I need to get out of here and like regroup for five hot seconds.
And it also helps. You mentioned coaching. When people already have kind of a basis, and when you make a probate course, because you have a probate course, right?
Yes.
When I made First Deal Done Fast, I made it because I was saying all the same things to all the same people. So I just wanted to record it so that everybody could have that. Yeah. And then I could focus on the strategy, exactly. The real marketing and branding, the real negotiations. I just want to have all that out. Like, haven't y'all listened to the podcast or the YouTube channel? Like, let's get on with the other stuff now. Let's do this. And I know that's all important, but it can also be done at your own time.
It can be, yeah. And it is inevitably where everybody, that's how they end up with courses and coaching. Because I've had a blog since 2010. And just today, I had somebody sending me all these questions, and I had to say, look, I'm getting ready to get on a podcast. Go over to the blog, and in the search bar, put in probate, because I can't teach you my course today because I can't, I have other things. But you inevitably end up there because, yeah, you get the core stuff down like a course, and then you want to teach people how to go forth and build a business.
Yes.
So that's where people don't understand it when you do this, but you understand it, I know, but that's, you can help more people this way, and you honestly get fried to death if you don't make this switch.
Absolutely. And I made the switch about 2 years ago and I love it. But
I
one
love
thing
it.
that I've never really tackled is probates. I
Mhm.
understand probates and I've done a handful of them, but I'm certainly not a specialist.
Mhm.
Give me the breakdown, because if somebody's brand new and coming into this, what is probate? Why should they focus on it? And, how do they get started? I mean, going to your blog, absolutely.
Mhm.
But tell me more about probate and what that word means.
Well, probate is when there's an estate, someone passes away and they have an estate, and people that have property are almost always going to go through probate unless they've done some estate planning to skip around the process. Because here's how it works. Someone passes away, and then now this is the short version. Mind you, there are things that happen in there, but
Oh yeah.
so someone passes away, the estate is opened, and then one of two things happens. Either there's a will, that's called testate, and that's where you or I choose our trusted person to administer our last wishes. Like, I want this person to have this and this to have this, and here's how I want my estate divided up. Now, some people don't have a will, and that's called intestate. And what happens in that case is the court appoints someone, and it will generally, you know how things go, like husband, wife, spouse, child, and there's a family tree, in other words. So in general, they would go down the next in line unless that person for some reason weren't suitable, but they appoint that person. That person is the administrator. Together, they're jointly referred to as the personal representative, but they have the duties and the legal responsibilities to watch over those assets, that money. They can't use that as their bank account. So then once that estate is open, then guess what? We can buy the house in almost every state. Now, if you're in California, we love you, but we're sorry for you, because you have to get fair market appraisals and all this crazy stuff. And they never look at the fact that the house is worth $150,000, but you have $50,000 worth of work. Nope, it's worth $150,000. No, actually it's not. But so then this is what I want people to really get. People have to sell the house. They have to liquidate the estate. So guess what? Sadly, you will never run out of leads.
Never, ever.
REOs will go away. Foreclosures come and go, up and down. Estate absentee owners, all those other niches, all those other ways of getting deals. Every single month, guess what? There's a new group of people that sadly, they pass away. So what happens then is the assets are liquidated, and the house is the big asset in most cases. So the house has to be sold, and in Kentucky and Tennessee, just like a regular sale. You just go write the darn contract, shoot it over to your closing attorney. I learned the hard way, because my process used to be like, if I bought an absentee owner, I would get that contract. I just kind of wait till I found a buyer, which was usually, if I don't have a buyer, like in 5 minutes, I'm getting worried. So then I would send both contracts over. Well, I don't do that with probates. As soon as I get the buy contract, I send it over. And you don't have to know a bunch of legal stuff, because you're a closing attorney. They're going to go, hold up, they've skipped 3 steps. So you don't have to worry about any of that. But you don't have to be a legal expert, but you do need to be able to know the terminology, the process. So once they sell the assets, then the next step is the creditors are paid. So any mortgages, credit cards, any debt is paid. And then the heirs get what's left. So remember that up here, somebody passed away and the heirs are down here that are going to inherit. They don't get a dime until all this other stuff is done. So that's their motivation.
And that could also include like the nursing home or the
yes.
Health bills or any other liens that maybe mom didn't tell you she had?
Yeah, elderly people are big on getting HELOCs at late in life. So you might buy a house where it's got a good roof, a good windows, and it has orange shag carpet and metal cabinets. Just looked at one of those a while back. Metal cabinets from what it was, that the 50s or something. It was like the outside's a brick ranch, and you walk in, you go, whoa.
I feel like I walked into a different decade.
Oh, yeah, orange shade carpet. So, but yeah, so these people, and the thing to remember about probates is they have lives, they have children. They've got to settle the business of this probate on top of everything else. So when they have a house that's a distressed property, they are motivated, very motivated.
I have been through this on the selling side. My papa passed in 11 and he had a trust, he had a will, he had all those things set up. But I know that, you know, my mom and uncle had to become the trustee and they had to set up this other business, and they had no idea what they were doing because they've been running businesses since they were children, but not this kind of business. And there was laws and there was hoops and there was jumps, and they had to set up different bank accounts. And I can only imagine how overwhelming it is for people who aren't used to running a business to suddenly have a business plop down in their life and their lap, and they just don't want to deal with it. Just somebody take this away.
They don't want to deal with it. And I tell people, and this is the honest goodness truth, I've gotten more hugs at probate closings than any other type of closing, because these people, they've lost someone in many cases that's really close to them. They're grieving. They've got to sell this estate. And you mentioned that it is the business of the estate. They have to get an EIN number for the estate. So they've not only, you know, as far as people say, I don't get the whole tax timeline. I said, well, you don't need to understand this, and I'm not a CPA, but just know that they have to file a federal tax return on the estate and on the deceased person's taxes. So yeah, that's, in a way, you need to know that, because that gives you another marker for a timeline for them. But
it's expensive to die.
It's expensive to die. It is, and your attorney's going to get a cut of that estate. And every time that I've had a problem, it's when the family tries to do it themselves. They get a step out of order, like they forget to notify the heirs. I did really to give you the short version, but that's how it works. But there's little things going on behind the scenes, processes. So for that reason, I learned with one of my first probate deals that took 5 months, because normally it's just like a regular closing. It's over in 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever, because you're always selling to an investor. You know, it's always an investor to an investor sale. So, but this one took 5 months, and I had to keep going back, getting an extension on my contract, because I was I'd been investing 10 or 11 years, but probates were new to me. So after that deal, I learned to put this one clause in my contract, and where you would normally say a closing will be like, I might write no sooner than 7 days and no longer than however many days, 21, 30, whatever your timeline is. I added this phrase afterwards: closing will be no sooner than 7 days, no longer than 30 days upon court/attorney approval. That gives you an open-ended contract. If they muck up the settling of the estate, then you have a contract 5 months later. So, but you have to put that, you have to know to put that in there. And I learned that one the hard way. And I tell people, don't do what I did, because I didn't know any better. And now you know better.
I had to learn a lot of things the hard way, and that's what I also share is don't do it this way. I went broke trying to get rich doing it that way. Don't do that.
They'll say, but I like that way. No. Have you made any money? No. Stop it. Stop it.
I agree 100%. I do a lot of owner financing. When I speak with elderly people or people in generations ahead of me, or, you know, however you want to say it, I let them know that when I buy the house, I'm buying it for what it's worth, and they're going to be able to pass that monthly payment on.
Right.
And a lot of people like that sense of security. That some people have children that would snort a bunch of money up their nose, or buy a bunch of TVs or cars or something, and they know they're just not responsible enough to inherit $100,000 or a 10 house portfolio or whatever. But when I can set it up on payments, and they know they're going to get a drip, and they know that that payment will cover their house payment, and they know that it's not that we're skipping anything, but that it's already lined up when they pass, and that gives them a lot of security.
Mm-hmm.
And they
Yeah.
can also decide to pass it straight to their grandchildren and skip their children.
Yeah, so that's another way that when you're dealing with elderly people, that's a great strategy, because once they pass away, seller financing's off the table because they have to liquidate everything. So another thing for people to know is when they're looking at these leads, and getting the leads is by far the hardest part in most places, because I do not encourage people to buy leads because they are rarely really good leads. So we'll just leave it there for probates. But they just have this awesome opportunity to help somebody. And if they're in a nursing home, don't skip those leads. When you're working probates, you'll see the address of the deceased come up, and the fact that they were in a nursing home does not mean they did not have a property sitting around somewhere. So you have to get to be a little bit of a detective.
I know I went to the city county building and I was going to get into probates, and I sat in those stacks of files and folders for like an hour and a half, and I got some leads, but then I felt like I was just chasing my tail. And I'll be honest, that was more of a dig than I wanted to do. So I will give you a huge round of applause for being willing to do that detective work.
Well, here's the thing. There's over 3,300 counties in the U.S., and every single one of them is different. A lot of them are online now. In Louisville, Kentucky, I thought we were really far behind, but they're published in the newspaper once a month. You can go into your online records, and some places like they've tacked the probate onto the end of wills. So if you pull in your online records and look at wills and like that, like for last month, then you might be able to get them that way. If I had a student in Texas and he said, I don't know where to start. I said, well, let's Google it. And sure they were. Harris County, Texas is all online. If you're in Chicago, you can get them right out, like in a hot minute online. So some places you have to go to courthouses. Some places, like I think Nashville's all online now. So
one thing that helped me was to establish those relationships before it got to that point, so that the family called me and said, hey, we're in probate.
Mm-hmm.
And that has worked for me because my county is not online yet. We barely have internet. No, I'm kidding. Okay, so you've mentioned a lot of things, and I want to go back and really clarify these before we get too far gone.
Okay.
You said that a lot of people aren't doing their estate planning or setting up their wills or their trust or whatever. Do you know what percentage of Americans have planned their estate for their passing?
I don't know, but I will tell you this: when the probates come out here, and I had someone that went through them manually in the newspaper, and it was a day's job, to go through those. There was a surprisingly astonishing number of people with expensive houses that did not do estate planning. And as a real estate investor, we really can't do too much with a $500,000 house. And, you're just, what are you going to do with it? So we're still always looking for that middle of the road bread and butter house. But it was just astounding to me that people that did not have estate planning, it was crazy.
And I know none of us want to talk about it, but it's going to happen to all of us. I have a will. I'm 34 years old. My brother is my real estate investing partner. He always has been. I spent his life savings the same summer I spent my life savings. So whether he wanted to or not, he was in.
He was in.
But we both have life insurance. We both have a will.
Mm-hmm.
We both have the paperwork set up because we travel a lot. We have a lot of fun. We do a lot of things, and we both ride in cars every single day. And
Yep.
It's risky to live, and we're
Mm-hmm.
all going to die. I mean, those are facts. So please, 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 y'all, get your paperwork in order. Whether you think you have a big portfolio and it's worth it or not, if you have people that you know and love, it is worth it to already have this stuff set up.
Yeah, if you have a house or children or both or any assets, you should have a will, because think about this. If you don't appoint your person, if your brother is your person or whoever it is, the court's going to pick somebody. And that is often a scary thought, that it could be the crazy sister or it could be somebody that is not going to handle your estate in the way you want it to be handled. So Don't, and especially if you have children.
I don't have any children yet, maybe one day in the future, but I don't right now. So my stuff is set up to go to my brother and or his heirs, but I could easily set it up to go to my church or to go to a dog rescue or something else that I care about, or it could go to one of my friends or my accountant or my attorney or somebody. But we hear about this stuff going crazy and wrong all the time. Get your paperwork in order and you don't have to worry about it going to the wrong person.
Another thing, it might go to the state too if you don't have things set up. Let's say you don't have children, your parents are deceased, and God forbid your brother's gone. Guess who's going to get it? Probably the state.
Yeah,
that's awful. That's just wrong.
that is a wasted life, and nobody wants that. We want to leave legacies.
Yes, we do.
Okay, when you were talking about testate and intestate, those were words that I learned in 2011 when I was getting my real estate license. Do you have a real estate license?
I do not. It just, at the time I started investing way back in, so I opened a business. I had a home inspection business for 17 years and opened that in 1991. And then I didn't even know there was such a thing as real estate investing, to tell you the truth. But I met a lot of realtors through the other business. And one of the realtors I met said, hey, you want to go to a RIA meeting? This is long about 1998. And I said, what's a RIA meeting? She said, oh, trust me, you're going to like it. And I went in there and Whitney, there were 300 or 400 people in the room. And I went, holy moly, you don't have to be a realtor to do this. And so I invested part-time for about 10 years.
I love that aha moment.
Yes, it was like, oh my God. I mean, I never missed a meeting for decades. And I was just like this giant sponge. And then around 2008, before the crash, you could see it coming. So I'm in a business, a home inspection business, which, by the way, don't get in that business. Talk about a business where you flat out. That business relies on retail transactions where we could all see the writing on the wall. So that was the time it gave me permission to close that business. But 2008, guess what else happened? Same thing. Nobody could get a retail loan. So I had a little plan. So that was a very demanding business. So I would rehab a couple of houses and then buy a rental. Rehab a couple, but it was slow because the other business took a lot of my time. But I'll look up in 2008. Now, if you can believe this, I had never ever wholesaled a house in 2008, and all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, I got this house under contract. But if I rehab this house, now mind you, the other businesses shut down. I'm at zero income. So except for my couple of little rental houses, which was not anything. So I said, well, I got to do something. I think maybe, what's that word? I'll just wholesale this house. So I called up, because I had 10 years of contacts, right? So I called up my friend. I said, you want my house? Well, yeah. And I thought, boy, that was easy. I just made $10,000 or $12,000 I drove there once, made a phone call from the porch. And he said, do you want this? He said, yeah, let me come look at it tonight. And then when he's there, he calls me from the porch and says, I'll take it. I said, would you mind getting my lockbox and bringing it to closing? So that was another aha moment, that sometimes I only made one trip to the property because, probates are either always vacant or there's stuff in there. And I worked, like if I'm working with Whitney, I know Whitney's not going to back up her moving truck and take the stuff out. So, but I
might back up a dumpster and hire somebody to take the stuff out.
But it was like an aha moment. And that's when I became an accidental wholesaler in 2008. And because I was really good at generating leads, because I was from the BI generation, before the internet and the other business, I knew how to network and I'll do all direct mail. I'd done direct mail for years. So it was a natural segue into doing that.
I love that, accidental wholesaling. And I love that you started learning about real estate investing in 98. Mm-hmm. And so for 10 years, you're mm-hmm. working a different business and building your rental portfolio. And then you accidentally started wholesaling. And I'll tell you, that kind of phone call on the porch, I had Jennifer Hillegas on the podcast a couple weeks ago, and she calls herself a 1 hour girl. She will get it under contract and sell it in less than an hour just because she knows how to network and she knows who wants what and she knows how to negotiate. And that is exactly what we're going for here is $10,000 an hour.
Yeah. And so it really, people go, oh, I got to do this giant buyers list. And I go, no, you need maybe 4 to 6, somewhere there. You need a landlord or 2. And I had one that I knew exactly what he bought. And he was my actual, I'm going to write check buyer. Then I had 4 or 5 rehabbers. The same half a dozen people bought all my deals all those years. And that is the truth. Other than an outlier property that I learned not to buy, where I would have to actually do some actual real marketing for it. But that's the truth. If you know where your buyers buy and you know what they're looking for, you can call them from the porch and you leave the lockbox on. And that's the other thing I do in my contracts. Since I'm not dealing with lived-in houses most of the time, I get permission that day. I'll say, I call them and can I put a lockbox on there? And I put it in my contract. So there's never anything, seller gives buyer permission to put a lockbox on. So, and I'm only sending out people that I trust. I'm not putting it out there like, this whole daisy chain deal that's going on and all that. So they really do go out and look at the house, call me from the porch. And it's like, I'm very businesslike in that I get, if it's my mother or my sister, I would get $1,000. I would get a deposit from them because I just say, look, it's a business procedure. If I would know you, it would be $1,000, but they all know. They just, I'll mail you a check, and it really is that simple.
You're always training people, and whether it is your mother or your sister or a contractor or a vendor or whoever, you are always training people. And if you set up, this is what happens, this is my system, this is how it flows, then nobody says, well, can you do it this way for me just this once? No, I am training you on how I conduct business. And this is it. You're playing my game, or go get your own leads. I don't care.
Yeah, one way or the other. So and really people tend to make it too hard. I tell people if you learn how to generate leads, you know how to build a brand, and then you can talk to sellers and go at it with, how can I solve your problem? But it's got to be a win for me too. I'm not shy about telling people, this house is going to be a lot of work. I'm going to make money on it at the end. You have the choice. You can put the money in you can do it. But they go, no, I don't want to do that.
The truth always wins. You're going to put a lockbox on it. The seller needs to know that. You're going to sell it to somebody else. The seller needs to know that. You're going to make money. And hallelujah, we all need to make money and want to make money.
Right. And if you don't know for sure if you're going to keep it as a rental or you're going to wholesale it or whatever, be upfront with the seller. I don't know specifically what I'm going to do with this property. I hold some, I don't say wholesale, I say I pass some on to other investors when I get too many or it doesn't fit my portfolio. If you're honest, you're right, you cannot go wrong being honest with people. Now, don't ever say words like, I'm going to wholesale it for money and all this. And that's the reason I personally double close. I don't want to have those conversations at closing. If I'm wholesaling a house, I'll pony up. It costs me about $350, $400 to double close. That's it.
Well, I tell people that you need to use small words with these sellers. They didn't sign up for a real estate conference. They're not listening to my podcast or your podcast or any YouTube channel so that they can be real estate investors. So when you say that I'm going to pass this on to other investors, that's something they can understand.
They can understand.
When you say, I'm going to wholesale this deal over to somebody else, they go, I don't know if I want to do that.
I don't know. I don't understand it. So you got to use small words.
They shut down.
You have to use their language. You have to be sure they understand. And really, you just that's the way you just do. You just talk. I tell people it's a conversation. It is a negotiation, but it is a conversation that at the very end of it, everybody should get something out of it that they're happy about.
And that's how you establish relationships. And that's why I think women are the best investors, because we're after that relationship and we all make money and we all win. And then they send us other leads. They send us their friends because they know who we are. They know what to expect from us. And we naturally take care of people. And I say it all the time that the truth always wins, and there's no secrets in real estate. If you double close, that's cool, but in 30 days, everybody's going to know what happened.
Everybody's going to know what happened. It's just, and there have been times when I've assigned small deals, it wasn't worth the double close. It is a little bit more difficult conversation. I'd rather not have it, but if I have to have it, I'm okay having it. It's a model that works for me, and it's not the only model. Now, I have students up in New Jersey. If they double close, it's going to cost them $6,000 or $8,000. I tell them, don't do that.
No way.
You're going to have to learn to get your words right with the seller. It's all about the words, and get the words right. And again, you can say, probably going to pass this on to one of my partners, whatever. And I was lucky on the few occasions that I've done assignments, and I can count on one hand the few I've done. My attorney will cut my check outside of closing. So my buyer will come in and close on the original contract. And then my attorney, who's also an investor, that's the key thing. Don't work with a closing attorney that's not an investor, ever.
You also mentioned earlier that you use a closing attorney on every deal. And I get a lot of flack because I do lease options and owner financing. I've done like 72 of them. I could write my own contracts, but I choose to send everything through my attorney.
Yes.
Why is that? People ask me all the time, why don't you just start writing it yourself? Well, I'm not an attorney.
We're not an attorney, and you don't want to hear about it later. We're all about simple, and we're all about the truth. We're all about doing it right. And I write in my contract, I've had problems with other, even real estate closing attorneys, where they just muck up the deal. And so I put in my contract, my closing will be at Borders and Borders at this address. And when people say, well, I like this attorney, I say, I've already had the title work done for the first part, and we're going to close over there because I know it's going to be right. I know they're legal eagles, and I'm not going to have any problems over there. And if there were ever a problem, they would 100% make it right. So we're going to do this the easy way and the safe way for all of us. But no, I completely agree. Does it cost you a few bucks? Yeah, but we're not attorneys. We're not
attorneys. And every bit of money I make, I'm either going to pay taxes on it, or I'm going to get people to help me. And that way I get a lot of mine back sometimes.
Yeah, I know.
I'll say, all right, I got this one back. I'm going to sell it again. He'll say, well, what happened? I say, well, they moved out in the middle of the night. And he says, okay. Or I've had 4 evictions, and 3 of them have been at the same house. And so my attorney thinks it's hilarious now that I'm like, I'm selling this house again, or I sold this house again. And he's like, seriously? I'm like, just send me a bill, dude. It doesn't matter to you. Fix it.
Yeah, that's me. Just, I don't want to hear about it. Just go do it and tell me how much it costs. And
it makes it so simple for him too, though, because he can trust that I'm not out just doing whatever I want to do. I'm running everything through him so that it's all up and up. It's all backed. And I can call and say, hey, they haven't sent me rent. Start the eviction paperwork. And that's all I have to do, because I don't want to get down in all of what happens there. He's already specialized in it. I'm just going to write him a check and he can go deal with it. I got other things to do.
Right. We're busy ruling the world.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to talk about, you had an inspection company, which is probably not like ruled by women.
Oh, no, I very definitely entered a man's world for sure.
So I think there's a lot of women, and a lot of women listen to this podcast, and probably yours too, who are kind of on the outskirts of real estate. Maybe their dad had an inspection company and now they're going to inherit that, and they're working in that man's world. Maybe they're working at the title company under the attorney, or they're a paralegal, or they're, somehow on the outskirts, or, maybe they're the property manager, but somehow they're on the outskirts. They're not a real estate agent. They're not exactly an investor yet, but they're thinking about it. So what do you tell those women who are on the outskirts?
Well, I think you need to get educated. I mean, you can certainly do blogs, podcasts, and I'm a big proponent of saying go to these shows that are, if you're a woman, listen to these women, because we have a little bit different perspective on the way things are in what has always been a man's world. And I like to tell people, see, I came way before you, and I like to tell people I made it in spite of the roadblocks. I just kind of put your tunnel vision on, carve your own way. Don't be concerned with being left out, because that happens a lot. But, you know, it was very much, you know, ignorance really is bliss, because I was clueless when I got that business. And I was the lowly owner. I did not ever crawl under a house, but we went through all the trainings, because it's a very litigious business. You know, you got to know what you're doing. But it was funny, because we'd go to meetings, and it would be 2 male inspectors and me on a panel, and they would go, "Tell me about marketing, Mark." And this one, they'd go, "Well, some question that had nothing to do with the house," and they'd go, "Well, Sharon, tell us about water leakage around the crickets on chimneys." And I'd go, "Okay." And then I'd just spit it out. But it was like a very much shoot the home inspector panel, shoot the one in the middle with the blonde hair panel, you know. It was crazy.
And you did it in spite of it. Now tell me, if you're on a panel and there's one woman, how many women were going to be in the audience to hear that?
Way less than men. Way less than men. My RIA is pretty big. It has, on average now, 250, 300 people. And you can probably count on 2 hands actual active real estate investors. There are women that have been coming for years, and they may have bought a property here and there. Some of them have never bought a property. I don't really know why they're there. But it's by and large men.
What about in 1998 when you first found these meetings?
Oh, same thing. And, you know, the guys here, I want to make something clear. They always treated me great. I mean, there was never any of that. And one of them said to me, "Well, we never treated you any different." We were having an honest conversation about the challenges of women in real estate investing. And he said, "Well, we never treated you any differently." And I said, "No, that's 100% true. However, the door to the Good Old Boys Club was only cracked for the women. It was never really open. You all had your secret lunches and all your little side stuff." And I had somebody tell me came on my podcast, within the past 10 years, "Well, I'm not telling you my secrets about student housing." And I went, "Dude, there aren't any secrets." "Well, I don't know what you're talking about." You're 30, so I don't know what you're talking about, but okay.
Well, I got to tell you that when I started going to the RIA, my broker, they were having a topic, and it was going to be a panel discussion of 3 property managers, and they were all women. And it was kind of a RIA meeting focused on women. And my broker knew that I was interested in property management, and I was interested in women empowerment, all that stuff. And so she sent me an email. She said, "Go check out the RIA." And when I got there, there were 50 people in the room, and 3 or 4 women. And the president of the RIA came up to me, and he was wonderful. And I still count him as one of my main mentors that helped encourage me get into it, because he was the one he also noticed that I had this knack for property management and leasing, and I liked all this stuff. And I was like a sponge, like you said earlier. I could not learn enough. And he really said, "You need to find out about lease options." And if he'd not told me that, he actually made me a little bet too. He said, "If you will go to this class that the RIA was putting on, if you don't learn anything, I'll give you your $75 back." And I was like, "All right, old man, I'm in." Well, that night I put $3,000 on my credit card, and I signed up to go whole hog into owner financing and lease options. And I mean, Victor Jernigan taught me a ton about real estate investing unofficially, but because he was the president of the RIA. But in contrast to that, 5-6 years later, I'm in other RIA meetings, and I traveled the country and go to different RIA meetings, and I pop in, and it's pretty clear right off the bat that I am one of those women that are making deals and not just hanging out and learning. And I went to a RIA meeting 2 months ago where there was 3 women, 20 people, and one of the guys leading it straight up told everybody, and he was a young guy, he was probably under 30, straight up told everybody that he gets his private money lending people from the country club. And I was like, well, that's fine. You know, people at country clubs have money. And then he went on to say that he was in the men's sauna.
In the men's sauna. Yeah, he had to point that out.
And I was like, all right, so the Good Old Boys Club is meeting in the men's sauna, and I am definitely not even going to have that door cracked. And I don't want to be in there, honestly.
Yeah, but that is, you know, it's curious to me. I'm not going to really go into it, but we just had an election at our thing where they actually came out to prevent the woman who was really in line to be president, where she didn't get elected. We'll just leave it at that. And it was it is mind-boggling to me that more than 20 years later, that it is still basically the same. And that is like unacceptable. It's totally unacceptable to me. And so I've been on a mission for a long time. And we talked a little bit before the show about seeing the flip over. And in my probate course, I'm seeing the flip. I look out there where there was a woman and 10 men, you know, that balance has finally changed. And I feel like part of what you're here for and what I'm here for is to empower women and say, the men are great. I've gotten a lot of help from men over the years, but there is still this subtle something that we're not all in with the men. I mean, it's just a fact.
And I think I really empower women. First Sealed and Fast, all of my courses, all my stuff, she buys it. I mean, I'm speaking directly to women. And so in First Sealed and Fast, I got 200 plus people. And probably 12 of those people are dudes. Mm-hmm. And it's not because I say no men. It's right. Just because I really focus on helping the women because we speak a different language. We have different issues and problems. And I know when I started, one of the biggest issues I had is that the sellers would be cool and they'd show me the house and we'd negotiate and we'd talk about the contract. And then when like I went to sign the contract, they were like, well, isn't your husband going to show up now to sign on his side?
Oh yeah, really? Or if you went with them, like you'd have a man like with you, it's like that they all of a sudden
talk to him.
So yeah, I don't know.
So it's not just in the real estate investing. It was from sellers. I even last summer, my mom is a landlord and she's had rental houses and she's been that female empowerment person in my life. But everybody didn't grow up with a mom who was a lady landlord and who understood all the things. So I feel like, you know, I probably play big sister to a lot of these women because I'm teaching them what my mom taught me and what I have learned out on my own doing these deals. But some of these people, some of these sellers know that my mom is an investor. And I was talking with one of my mom's friends who was also an investor, and he said to me, because I do owner financing and lease options, that's what I specialize in. My mom doesn't. She's just a cash buy and hold girl. Mm-hmm. So he said, yeah, it sounds great. If your mom will co-sign with you, we'll do that.
What?
And I was like, dude, I've done 72 deals without my mom co-signing on me. No, thank you. I told him, I said, I'm not a kid.
Well, I have to tell you a story. I grew up in a home of entrepreneurs. So my dad was a contractor and my mother, you know, she was a homemaker for years. And then she worked and she bought a little business. She had no training in hair, but she bought a little beauty salon that was for sale. And she didn't even know the words passive income. But when we were children, now this was back a long time ago. And when women did not really fly airplanes. So my dad comes home. My dad was 12 years older than my mother. Now there were 4 kids born in 6.5 years. He came home and he said, I've decided I'm going to learn to fly. And he was so excited. And my mom said, I think that sounds wonderful. So I'll learn to fly too. And he said, well, I'm not sure if we can both do that. And she said, yes, we can. You'll just fly half as much. That was a story. I had to get to be a grown-up to really realize what a trailblazer my mother was, because, you know, she was just my mother because she passed away when I was, 20-some years ago. But it was like that story was still like, oh my gosh, what a trailblazer she was. And that's what they did. He flew half as much, and she was a pilot with 4 little kids, and back when women didn't do that.
Do it to it, baby. One of my favorite grandmother stories of my mom's mom, who was a homemaker and didn't really have a job after she married my papa, her grandfather's farm came up for sale, and she went to the auction, because you talk about people doing deals and doing things that women didn't do before we had the internet and before it was so easy for everybody to do everything. I mean, these women were trailblazers. So she told my papa she was going to the auction. He didn't think anything about it. And he was always buying and flipping houses before HGTV was. He was always in and out of deals. He was always buying businesses and things. She went to the auction and came home and said, yeah, well, I bought this and I bought the blender and I bought that lamp and I bought this. And then I bought the farm.
I love it.
She bought the house and all, however many acres, bought the farm. And he said, okay.
Okay.
And that, I mean, 150 years ago, I think in 1838 or something, I probably just butchered that, but like in the 1800s, Mississippi was the first state that allowed women to own property without a man signing off on it. And y'all, this is not 18 whatever.
Yes.
And women are still coming up against some challenges that should have died a long time ago.
A long time ago.
That story sticks out as that's why my mom is so empowered. Her mom was empowered, and my papa empowered her. My dad empowers my mom. My husband empowers me. And it's important to have the men that are going to encourage you and support you and not try to baby you and protect you. And my husband and I went through a couple learning lessons on that. But that's okay.
Yeah, that happens. Stuff happens.
It's fine. But yeah, she said, and then I bought the farm.
I go, grandma.
Do it to it, baby.
Yeah. I think that's awesome. But, you know, not everybody was that lucky. And truthfully, I grew up in that environment. I thought it was normal. I really had to get out and get married myself and go, why do these people think this stuff? Like you can't do this and you can't do this? Because I was always taught you can do whatever you want to do. That's just was an unwritten rule.
And I was always taught that you need to be smart.
Yes.
And when I started buying houses, I was on Facebook, which we have now. My grandma didn't have that. And I said, I bought a house. And the first response I got from like 15 people, they're like, congratulations, where is it? When are you moving? And I was like, moving? Why would I move?
Yeah.
This is like the 4th house I bought this year, y'all.
Are you not paying attention?
I'm not buying a house. I have 13 houses, a trailer, and a condo, because they're all different, right? I've got 19 apartment units now, and I still live in my mom's rental house because I just don't have the mentality to say, okay, I'm going to buy a house for me.
Well, you might have to do that. It's funny that I know an investor in Chicago that is extremely successful. I mean, they have 160 houses. For him, real estate's all about owning rental property. I mean, the man has nice toys, an airplane, because he likes to fly, but he lives in an 800 square foot house because he doesn't care. You know, he likes he said, you got to get to the point where you have the passive income to afford the toys. He gets angry when people buy toys and expensive cars. He said, you have to get to the point where you have earned that and your assets pay for that. You don't take your money you use for investing. And it's a whole different mindset. But it's funny that you say that because it's like somebody has bought a condo, somebody's fixing it up for him. I say, well, what's it look like? I don't know. She's just going to do it. You really don't care. What's wrong with you? Now, I mean, it's like, no, it's just a place I go to bed. You know, I don't care. It's like,
There are thousands of ways to make money in real estate. But I think, especially when you get started, ignore the toys, ignore the filters on Instagram, ignore the photo shoot, ignore all of that. And you invest until you are able to leave your 9 to 5 or sell your business or do something else and then go full time in real estate. There are thousands of ways to do deals. There are thousands of ways to live. And it's not always going to be what they show on TV. And if you will get that out of your mind and you will focus on you, your family, your goals, your sellers, your people, you'll end up in 5 years in a totally different world.
Yeah, I agree with that. And you have to focus on building your business. Don't focus on buying a big house. It really is true that the most successful investors that I know, they don't go out and buy a great big house. In fact, a lot of them live in the same house they lived in 20 years ago because their love of houses has nothing to do with where they live. Now I do like pretty, I'll admit that, but I'm not a go out and buy a great big house person either. So I don't know.
I've been looking at a primary house and I keep messing up because I run the numbers on if I could Airbnb or VRBO it or somehow because I'm a gypsy. I travel around and I'm not there all the time. So if I could rent it 1 week a month and make that mortgage payment, then it's going to be okay. And how am I going to stage it? Like, so I go down this horrible rat hole of all these things and, you know, writing off the furniture and decorating it clean enough and good enough, and I just need a place to crash.
Let me tell you, I know somebody with 5 children who are, 3 of them are in college now, that does exactly that. They bought a bigger house, and periodically the kids go live at Mama's, and they go to Florida, and they rent out their beautiful home. And I mean, it is totally doable for you to do that. I know that.
I've been practicing with one of my houses in my portfolio. I turned it into an Airbnb so that I could learn on something I already had paid off, before I go buy that $500,000 house that does need to be bought as an investment. Those are, not every day. Like you said earlier, we really need those bread and butter houses. But if I could get a big fancy house on the lake or the river at a good buy, still cash flow it, I would do that.
You can totally do it, because I know a couple people that are doing it, and I just go, what do you do with the kids? But they make so much money on their nice house that it's totally worth the inconvenience. And I want to say 6, 8, 9 times a year, they're out of there. And you can make enough money. I know that we have someone here that did an Airbnb, and I'm going in Louisville, Kentucky, $8,000 a week. It's like, and he said, yes, it's my closing attorney. He says, I've done all the numbers. Here's the numbers. They're all up on the wall, because we're there for a LOTS program, a learn on the site. I'll have it paid off in 6.5 years. And I'm going, okay, case closed. It's like,
I wish more people would look at their primary like that, because I'm in the process of convincing my husband that we need to do that, to pay off our primaries. Because most people, I'm in a lot of Facebook groups, and when people say, what is the biggest headache? What is the biggest struggle? What is the thing that keeps you up at night? Most people are super stressed about making that mortgage payment. If they didn't have a mortgage payment, if they could be creative about, okay, well, somebody else is going to stay in my place a couple different times a year. If they could just be open to that.
It's a different way of thinking. You've thinking it though, and I've seen it. Because if somebody can do it with 5 kids, you can totally do it with a normal, like you have no children, and it's a completely doable thing.
It's just your mindset. Are you okay with it? And you got to be okay with it. And if the house gets paid off in 6 years, then chuck all that furniture, go buy fresh, and just call it good, because 6 years are going to fly by. I spent almost 5 in college.
Yeah. If you ever come to Louisville, I'll have to take you down there and get him to show you this Airbnb. It's flat out awesome.
I'm in. That sounds good to me. Now I need a trip to Louisville. We were there for Private Money Profits and the Derby.
I saw that. I was gone, and you came at Derby. That's a national holiday. Don't plan an event on Derby.
Well, it was, when I plan my events and I plan my retreats, I try to plan it around something that people want to see. Like last year we went to Albuquerque for the International Balloon Festival. I don't know why else you would go to Albuquerque, New Mexico, except the Balloon Festival. So I tacked my event onto the front of it. Mm-hmm. Because we want to travel. We want to see things. We want to do those, once in a lifetime things. And so I try to tack it onto the front of the Derby. I'm going to try to tack it onto something else so that you can extend your stay and still get the education.
Right.
You mentioned the education was important earlier. So what is your advice for women who are getting started? They're trying to get their first deal. They're trying to get into whatever it is. What kind of advice do you have for women getting started?
Well, you just have to take the leap. First of all, there are a lot of people that go and they study. I'm a huge proponent of education, but I would say you have to set a date. I'm going to buy a house I'm going to make an offer and make offers by this date, because your first deal is by far the hardest. So make the offers, get your first deal under your belt, and then get engaged in your community, get engaged with, women that are strong women that can help you move your business along. But don't be afraid to invest in your education. It is never going to fail you to invest in your education.
Get your first deal done fast.
Get it done fast.
I like to say.
and be branding yourself. This is the one mistake I made early on, was I thought, I only got a couple houses. I don't have a brand, whatever. Day one, start building your online presence, build your brand. Even if you're the guy that only, or the gal that only has 2 houses, get known as your RIA person, as the person who's looking for houses, as the person who will close on a deal. Don't back out on a deal. Follow the basic rules of honesty, ethics, and do what you say you're going to do.
I agree 100%. Sharon, tell us again how people can get a hold of you. I know you're in the She Buys It group on Facebook, so you're active in there and hanging out, so people can ask you questions probably in there too. And that link is in the description. But how else can people get a hold of you if they're interested in the probate course or anything else you got going on?
Well, you can, everything is hinged off of my blog, the Louisville Gals Real Estate blog. But if you want to go straight to the probate course, it's Probate Investing Simplified. And my promise to you is that if you take this course in 6 weeks, you can go out and show up as the expert. You'll know everything you need to know to show up as the expert in probates.
I love that.
Yes.
All right, Sharon, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for hanging out with us this morning. Y'all don't forget to subscribe and check out Sharon's podcast also. And y'all get out there and get these deals done.
Get it done fast.
That's right.
Thank you.
All right, bye y'all.